What is happening, guys? Cowboy here, and welcome to my starter guide for Code Vein. Now in this video, we're going to cover a lot of topics ranging from stat scaling to various weapon movesets and controls, but the basic gist is that by the time you're done watching, you should have all the information you need to go into this game and enjoy yourself without being confused. Now there will be some minor spoilers in the video as we're going to be scrolling through items and armors and blood codes, so you may see some names that you could consider spoilers, but we're not going to actually be showing any spoiler type content. We won't be showing off any late game weapons, we won't be showing you any late game areas, so just to alleviate concerns there. But anyway, jumping on into it, the first and foremost thing we're going to talk about is leveling and building a class in Code Vein, because this is the #1 thing I see people asking about. Now, when it comes to leveling up in Code Vein, you're only leveling up your base stats when you level. As you can see here, my health goes up, my stamina goes up, the amount of damage I'm doing for my weapons increases, and then my light and dark gifts will also increase, but nothing else is going to change. Defenses, resistances, stat scaling, none of that is impacted by leveling up. Now, as for your actual stats and how those are determined, it is entirely determined by your blood code. Your blood code is essentially your class in Code Vein, but you're able to dynamically change it on the fly, and your stats will automatically reallocate when you do. And to elaborate on this, if I played the first 100 levels of the game as a fighter, all I did was play as fighter, I wanted to beat stuff with swords, and then at level 100 I suddenly said, you know what, I think I want to be a caster now, I want to use spells. Just like that, I'm now a caster. All of my stats have now changed to be a caster. It's like going from 40 strength to 40 intelligence in Dark Souls that fast. That's how quickly it happened. Doesn't matter that I leveled up as a fighter, all of my stats change when I select a different blood code. So using this as our base of understanding, we are going to make a strength build. So looking at Atlas, I can see Atlas has S scaling in strength and it gets S scaling in vitality. I can hit this button to look at the hint. I can see that, my strength is going to help physical attack and HP. My vit is going to help HP and physical damage reduction, so that sounds nice. So you even got a thing right here that explains stat scaling, but it's kind of obscure. But anyway, so yeah, I'm going to go for a strength build. That sounds nice. Lots of health, lots of damage. Now, the first thing we're going to do is pick our weapon. Now, looking at our weapons, we're going to look at the greatswords. I can see that I get pretty good damage on this, 1823. This great sword, I can see that I don't meet the requirements for. That's what that cross means. It's because I don't have any dex. This has a B in dex, and looking over here, I can see I only have D+ in dexterity, so I can't use that great sword. This one I could. This is A and E. I get a little bit more damage out of that, so I can put that on. This one is B, D, D, D. I can see I lose some damage, but it has blood damage on it, and I gain higher defenses. This is my usual go-to. But I can see with this one, nice hefty defenses on it, nice physical. So let's say we'll just use that for now, okay? We'll use that, and then for our secondary slot, we'll go with the machete. Now, moving on into our blood veil, we're going to want a blood veil that aligns with strength. The one I have right now isn't a terrible choice. I can see I have slow mobility with my first weapon, normal with my second, my drain attack's respectable, my defense is respectable. If I go to the silver garb, I can see I gain a little bit more defense. My stat scaling is going to be the same, but I'm going to lose weapon mobility. If I go over to this guy, I can see I keep the slow normal. I lose a little bit of defense, but I'm going to gain a little bit of drain attack. And the point I'm trying to make here is that your armor, your blood veil, is only going to determine your armor stats. And what I mean by this is, we're using the greatsword right now. It's 1705 damage, right? And that is with a C+ strength scaling blood veil. If I put on, let's find something. Here we go. This has E. E scaling. 1705. Same exact damage. So the basic gist here that I'm trying to get across is when it comes to what it says here for stat scaling on your weapons, you want to match that up to your blood code, but the stats on your weapon and all the values you see on your weapons are only going to impact your weapon, and then the defense you have while using that weapon. Whereas your blood veil is only going to impact your defense and your drain attack. So when it comes to picking a weapon and a blood veil that you want to use, the only thing that is going to have any cohesion between them is going to be defense, which is impacted by both of them, and the mobility of your weapon, which is impacted by both of them. But in terms of your gift scaling and your drain attack, that's purely determined by your blood veil. And then in terms of status effects and your raw attack damage as well as drain rating, that's purely determined by your weapon. Now moving on from there, let's talk about the actual movesets. Now with weapons, you have your basic attack, which is just hitting X. Pretty straightforward, you can just rotate through it. Your regular Y attack is going to be your heavy, and you can also charge this to do more damage. In addition, some weapons have a special heavy attack. You can see this thing here does a big old energy release. Outside of that, A is related to draining, and you have to hold down A to drain. Draining is also going to be dependent on your blood veil. Something like the claw. Claw is going to have a rush forward, whereas alternatively, if I were to use a stinger type one, you can see I'm launching it on out. And using your charge drain, you'll notice that down in the bottom corner, I see a little +2 popping on up, and that means that my total Ichor count has increased by 2 from doing that attack. I only have 10 Ichor right now, but I can go up to 18, and that will persist until you go ahead and rest at a Mistle. Now, moving on from there, there are a couple other attacks that aren't explained all that well. We have rolling attacks, which are all pretty straightforward. We have dashing attacks, which happen by holding the right bumper and attacking. If you're stationary and you hit right bumper and light, you'll have an alternate attack. As you can see with this, it's like a retreating slash. With the machete, it's a jumping slash. Switching up to a different greatsword here. Using the Zweihander, I can see I have a thrust attack with it. But so you have that using your right bumper and X, or light attack. Using right bumper and heavy attack, we'll do a launch attack. Now the thing with launch attacks is you can do this move at any time, but ideally you only want to do this when you have focus. Now focus is generated through combat, whether you're dodging or taking damage. You'll notice a little blue bar that shows up, and when that blue bar fills up all the way and it procs, focus is active. While focus is active, you can go into a launch attack and you will knock the monster up and automatically do a follow-up with your veil, doing big damage to the monster and draining it of health. Besides that, you have backstab attacks, which are just, walking behind something and hitting X. And then you have parries, which are performed by hitting the left trigger and parrying an attack, at which point you get a follow-up. Aside from that, we also have drain attacks, which happen by attacking and then hitting the right bumper and A. Now, some drain attacks are really nice, like with the claw here, it's nice and fast. Other drain attacks, not so much. Using something like an Ivy type, for example, you can see it's a much longer animation to get that on off. So in general, if you're going to be doing a lot of drain attacks, I like either the hounds, I think, work very well. Hound type fangs, I think the claw works very well, but I think spear and ivy aren't all that ideal. I mean, you can do them at any time. The thing is, they're much longer animations, and another thing to note is that doing a charge strain, or doing a backstab, or a parry, or a launch will add 2 to your Ichor. So you notice down, I get +2. Whereas, regardless of what you're doing a drain attack will always only add 1 to your Ichor. And that's why ultimately I don't recommend using your drain attacks with the slower blood veils, because right here I'm hitting faster than I was with my greatsword. With Ivy, that's hitting roughly slower than I am with my greatsword, and that's saying something. Now moving on from there, let's talk a little bit about gifts and how those work. Now, as you play the game, each different code has access to gifts. Looking at Fighter here, I can see a little twinkle on everything, and that means that I have inherited that gift, and I can now use that gift on any other blood code that I play as. To inherit something, you need to keep playing with that class and using that ability until it levels on up. The higher your overall level, your actual player level that you are, the longer it's going to take to master those skills. However, you can use Awaken items in addition to Haze to just purchase them outright so you can use them for other classes. And this is where the real end game of Code Vein comes in. You have all these different classes, and you can essentially pull skills from various classes and mix and match to make a class that ultimately really fits what you're trying to do. Looking through a couple abilities, I can see that some stuff says tree light, and that means that it's going to be impacted by that where it says gifts light right there. That's what's going to impact my stuff that says tree light. Anything that says dark, on the other hand, taking a look at a mage here, you can see this is tree dark. That's going to be impacted by dark. I can also see the required stats I have for that, the Ichor cost, the cooldown, and all that stuff. But the basic gist is that anything that is going to be offensive, damaging magic is usually going to align itself with dark. Anything that's a status is usually going to align itself with dark, whereas more utility type magic or buff magic is usually going to align itself with light. The spikes are the one alternative to this. There's a couple spells. There's like a flame spike and a blood spike. These are they're offensive magic tools, but they are considered like very, very low cooldown. They're basically designed to give strength builds those, and actually you can get away with using the barrages as well, just because of how low they are. But you can see these all scale with mind. And usually you have some mind. I mean, taking a look at a different class here, yeah, there we go. I can see Dark Knight here. This has an A+ scaling and strength, but I'm able to use mind-based abilities on it, so I can make use of the spikes. And while they're not going to do a ton of damage, it just gives you an option to essentially just toss out some quick range damage while you're still playing as a melee-focused class. So moving on from there, passives, obviously going to help impact your class. You're going to want to have on whatever lines up with what you're kind of doing. So, you know, if I'm playing Atlas, I want something like health stimulant and strength and vitality. If I'm using two-handed swords, I'll use that. If I'm using halberds, I'll use that. So obviously you want to just pick passives that kind of align with the playstyle you're going for, and then keep in mind what skills you're doing. Now speaking of skills, we're going to talk about buffs briefly. Stuff like lightning weapon, frost weapon, blood weapon, flame weapon. All of these just add a flat damage boost of roughly 20% to your weapon damage. In addition to that, they stack. So using something like this, for example, let's see, I do 903. Now I do 1084. Now I do 1265. So we are just seeing a flat out damage increase. I mean, if I had more Ichor, I could put on, you know, I could have lightning, blood, fire, ice weapon at the same time and probably do some pretty goofy damage with it. But when it comes to resistances and the damage you're going to do, that is pretty much entirely determined by the resistances of the enemy. Some enemies are going to be weaker to fire, while some are going to be weaker to ice, etc. Aside from that, some things just here going on in the world that I want to discuss. Your depth maps, you're going to use those by talking to Davis over here. Your depths are considered essentially bonus dungeons that you can do. Each different depth will mimic a zone that you'd already been to, but you can go into depths and repeat them over and over and over again to continually fight the bosses in them and farm them for loot. I know this one in particular, I can get the final upgrade mat every single time I kill the final boss in it, and I can simply jump right in, go straight for that boss after I beat it the first time. As you can see, I'm also getting awaken rewards, which are the things I use to unlock abilities. Aside from that, some other general stuff. Over here we have Rin. Rin is where you're going to go to upgrade and transform your equipment. Just to go through transformations and how each thing works real fast. Alleviation is going to reduce the weight of something. Fortification is going to increase the weight, but also increase the damage. Intensification helps to increase your scaling all around. Gifts will remove any scaling bonus you get, but increase the base damage in relation to the gifts you're trying to do. Devour will increase your drain rating, allowing you to get back more Ichor as you attack the enemy. The next couple, fire, ice, lightning, all pretty straightforward. They just add a flat 50 damage, which makes them better on fast weapons as opposed to big weapons, of course. Similar with your status stuff, you're getting 20, 15, 20, and then 20, and those are going to add statuses. In a similar way, going to transforming the blood veil, it's the same thing. If I go for a lightning, I'm going to add lightning resist to the blood veil. If I go for gifts, I can see that my scaling is going to drop, but the base is going to increase. So doing this would all in all increase the potential of my light gifts on the weapon. Going here would increase my resistances. Going for fortify is going to make it heavier and just increase stats overall. In general, fortify is extremely potent, so I'd suggest that you become really good friends with our buddy Yakumo here, because he has access to it. So speaking of the NPCs, one of the things I want to talk about is exchanging. Now, you can give NPCs valuables, and as you give them valuables, you will get training points. Depending on the valuable you give them will determine the training points you get. I just gave him a retro game console. I got 3 trading points for it. If I gave him something he's not interested in, I may only get 1 trading point for it. But this is how you're going to gain access to things like Atlas Chrome, which is used to fortify gear with the fortification buff. You can find this stuff out in the world, but otherwise that is the only way to gain it. If I go over here to Louis and go to exchange and receive items, I can see he has the Prometheus stuff. This is what's going to provide me with alleviation. So when it comes to what you want, that's how you get that stuff from those people. In general, Yakumo is going to have fortification, which is really nice. And then Mia over here is going to have drain, which is really nice. So those are the 2 primary people I think are most worth mentioning, because drain is required for pretty much any real mage or dexterity build, whereas fortification is going to be kind of your go-to for a strength-oriented build. So for this next part, I want to talk about traversing the world and how to identify stuff on the map. Now, my map is obviously already revealed because I've been through this zone, but looking at the map, there's a couple things. Shinies like this, that just means there's an item there that you missed. These indicate a switch of some form. This little domino type thing is an elevator. These flourished out items are mistles that reveal areas, whereas these ones are mistles that you can rest at. And these little blue people are NPCs. Since it has this little exclamation point, that means they usually have a quest or some kind of new dialogue for you. These indicate chests. These indicate doors that have to be opened. And as you first go through the map, obviously all you're going to see is just fuzz and a breadcrumb trail that's telling you where you've been. And while you can fully explore every inch of the map before revealing it, what I actually recommend doing is going through the map, just kind of continually pushing forward and trying to make progress. And then once you get towards the very end of it, not necessarily the end, but like eventually you're going to hit a spot where you're going to find a mistle. And when you find that mistle, you're going to reveal everything that was on the map that you missed. And then at that point, I would suggest going on back and finding stuff. So, you know, right now, just this is a rather early area, so we're just kind of going through using this as a baseline. This will also give us a chance to talk about focus. So you can see a little bar that's above my stamina, and it looks like 2 arrows that are slowly closing on in. And that is focus. Both enemies as well as the player have focus. Focus gets built up from blocking attacks, from dodging attacks. And once it's up, you can see I can go into my launch attack and I'll get a follow-up on there. There are passives that will help you while focus is active, whether it's increasing the damage you do, increasing your defense, stuff like that. But the best way to build focus is going to be just playing cleanly. Whether that's by parrying the enemy, doing well-timed dodges, blocking damage right as it's about to come in. Any of those are instances that will help you to build focus. Whereas just sitting here and beating stuff to death will not. Let's see, backstabs pretty easily by just walking right on behind the enemy. And the other thing that's nice about backstabs is while you're in a backstab animation, you are completely immune to anything the enemy could do. So, makes them super valuable against big guys like this. If you miss the backstab, just keep looking for the spot. Some enemies it's a little bit finicky on, like these big gals right here. I'm just going to keep tweaking. There we go. And that's probably one of the hardest parts of this game is some enemies are very, very janky when it comes to finding where you need to hit them to get that backstab. So just, keep going around and you'll hit it. So eventually you'll hit a mistle. When you hit your mistle, obviously the map is revealed. And this is what I'm talking about. Now that the map's revealed, given my map was already shown, but if it wasn't, I would see that, oh, okay, I missed a piece of treasure over there. There's a little side area right here that I missed. I bet there's some kind of item over in that. I didn't go around this little bend. There could have been an item over there. I see a little offshoot on the map over here. I bet there's something over there. And so the point here is going through a zone and finding the mistle and then going on back, now that you know all the little nooks and crannies, is just going to save you a lot of headaches and a lot of wasted time. So in terms of progressing through a level and whatnot, I recommend that much more over trying to find everything as you initially go through a zone, which is coincidentally what I did back on the Let's Play. So consider it lessons from somebody that went through these struggles. So anyway, that is going to wrap things on up for this. I'm pretty sure I covered everything that I kind of wanted to for the guide, but if you have any questions whatsoever, make sure to drop them down in the comments section. In general, I'm pretty good about getting back to folks with questions, so as long as it's something that I can answer, I will be sure to. Other than that, thanks for coming on by. Appreciate the support, and I'll catch you guys next time.